So thank you so much for those inspiring pitches with some really good pitches and ideas so far. So my name is Stefan, and I'm one of the founders of ChargeIQ, based in Stuttgart, Germany. And with ChargeIQ, we solve one of the biggest upcoming problems our energy systems has. So now you see the next slide. So a few days ago, the German Chancellor for Economy and Climate Protection, Robert Habeck, said that it's particularly important that a focus is placed on the integration of charging infrastructure and the grid, and that our goal should be that renewables are used in a more efficient way. For example, that electric vehicles charge directly the energy that's produced where they parked all day long. So the solution sounds pretty simple, right? We need more charging infrastructure and more solar power. But there's another incoming problem that we are facing, and I'm explaining you in a second. But before that, we take a look at our current production of renewables and have an outlook that what will be produced soon. At that point, you probably think, looks good, more renewables, less emissions, but exactly that takes us back to Robert Habeck and our upcoming problem. The problem is not the missing charging infrastructure and the solar power generation, it's especially when the energy is generated and when it is consumed. Today, we have the situation that during the day, energy is sold to foreign countries because we can't consume all of it. And the thing is that we pay them for taking our green energy. The other way around, we pay high surcharges, if we need energy from foreign countries at night, that's in general generated by nuclear power or, let's say, less greener power plants. So in fact, we all have to pay for this imbalance. What made us at ChargeIQ think about it? How do we get more flexibility into our energy systems? And the solution we figured out is that we need to integrate those local power plants to the grid. We see that with upcoming regulations, more and more energy is produced in so-called microgrids. But we need, what we need is not only to produce this energy, it also needs to be consumed and stored, but also one day given back to the grid to stabilize it. And what could be more suitable than, on the one hand, the biggest battery pack on site that you can think of, and on the other hand, the most flexible consumer. And both of this is your electric vehicle. So we know that we can predict shortage and abundance if we use the data we generate to give a more value to grid operators so that they can stabilize their grids, but also to charge to charge point operators to take part in energy trading and offer their flexibility. But the question is, how do we get there? How do we reach as much, let's say, micro operators as possible? The solution is our B2B2C driven business model with our end-to-end technology. With ChargeIQ, our user-centric interfaces, charge point manufacturers, our B2B partners, can easily enable their customers to operate charging infrastructure on their own. Combined with our IoT technology, we enable them to use this local energy management applications. So we give our end customers the control over their charging infrastructure to configure it to exactly their really own needs. On the next slide, I'm showing you some examples. This looks pretty much like an, let's say, app store for e-mobility. The thing is that compared to others, we don't think that only our services are the right ones for the end customers. Through our software infrastructure, we build an ecosystem allowing our partners, those third-party software providers, to offer their services directly to the end customer. Here you can see marked with 1 star, the first productive services working on our platform, and marked with 2 stars, so more that are in our pipeline and coming soon. As you can see, extensions are just starting to grow, driven by new demands and new technologies. To give you a brief impression of our team, here you can see my co-founder Volker and me, supported by our team and our supporters. And
1 minute warning.
Yeah, that's right. At the moment, we are closing our seed series to further accelerate and implement ChargeIQ in more and more charging infrastructure. And that's like the end of my presentation so far.
Awesome, Stefan. Thanks for sharing. It looks like big things are happening there. Let me bring in our investor panelists so we can grill you and see what questions they have for ChargeIQ. You want to go first this time, Ben?
Sure, definitely. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on who is your customer. So you might have missed that a little slightly. And the second piece, how you fit in with the competitive landscape, meaning given that, I mean, naming here the big ones which have been SPAC'd, like ChargePoint or so. So how does it compare and what you're optimizing for. So twofold question.
So our primary customer is the charge point manufacturer. Today we see, like in German or European area, about 130 different charge point manufacturers that do really good hardware, but they don't have like the right fitting software for every use case. And we see, as I mentioned, or as I showed you, a lot of different use cases. And we think it's pretty easy to put in the software partners we have to like all this charging infrastructure. So we sell our technology in a first step, a white labeled software solution. And as a next step, this IoT device to charge point manufacturers. And yeah, the competitive landscape is pretty big, but we say that our technology is completely hardware agnostic. So we can work with every hardware, even after you already installed your hardware. So we can also serve legacy that you can use our software services only.
And how does churn look like when you're software only? So can you switch it on and remove, or what is the factor of this integration? So how much effort is needed on your side or the hardware side to keep your solution?
Yeah, the good thing in charging infrastructure is that every like hardware uses like a standard protocol. It's called OCPP, and that's standardized. So we can use like every hardware working with OCPP, and I think at least 95% of all hardware on the market is using OCPP, so we can implement like every hardware. Did I miss one question? Sorry.
No, definitely not. But maybe, so if I'm paraphrasing here, so you're optimizing for peak shaving and creating a microgrid, including battery storage, etc. This is how I got it, at least. The other aspect is it possible also via your platform to optimize for lower emissions, meaning that optimize for off-peak or off-hour electricity, so pricing as well as
that's exactly where we started. What I just showed you is like the big picture where we're facing at, where we're pointing at. But we started as, let's say, the Airbnb for charging infrastructure, where we started with sharing charging infrastructure. We see that a lot of our customers use their charge points only at night if they're at home, or at the daytime when they're at work. And we say, okay, why don't we give up this the other time to other users? So we have like some first software services allowing you to share your charging infrastructure to thirds.
Got it. Thank you.
That's some first services on our side. Sure.
Thank you, Stefan, for that presentation. So this is the world that I lived in for my entire career before I started VC, the digital platform world. And so what you're trying to do, definitely needed. I'm a big fan of decentralized grids in general, and it just seems obvious to me that that's how we have to do things going forward. Big competitive landscape. You've addressed that already. Platforms are hard to build, and it's all about partnerships, right? So what's your partnership strategy right now, and what's your open source strategy? I feel like they're very related, but if you have an open source strategy, do you have one? Explain that. And then who are going to be your big partners that are going to make you successful?
We take every partner that's coming to us, we just give them access to a platform. A platform, what we think has just more value. If you have like different services, you can pick the one that you really want. If I offer you only one service that's coming from ChargeIQ, I guess that's not the best service. So we say every service is welcome to a platform, and we see that the feedback is pretty good from our partners. So we give them like active access. So we implement them. We give them like first projects, and that's like the feedback, like the pretty good feedback we have so far. That's like what they're looking for. So they don't have to implement or develop their own backend, and just use our infrastructure to do their reselling.
You're going to find fertile hunting ground in the partnership area and hardware, because they can't do software. They're like thinking about the hardware piece, and they are excellent at that. And then the software is really what makes it that users want to use it, right? So,
and they're super lucky to have like they have to have like a huge bundle of services where the end customer can pick off, and that's where we're going to.
As a double click, what does the actual business model and economics look like for you and for the partners?
At the moment, we're starting with selling license to our charge point manufacturers, but we also have some first software as a service. payments where we sell our software, but the next step is that we switch to a more data-driven business model, because we have, like, in the area of Stuttgart, a mid-three-digit number of charging infrastructure running with our software, and we know pretty exactly when people are charging and how their habits are. And we know from the grid operators that this information is pretty interesting for them and pretty worth some money someday. So we changed from license to SaaS up to a data-driven business model.
If I may follow up specifically on that one. So you alluded to that slightly, but what does your end game look like? Or what would be the potential exit opportunities? How much would you need to scale? And I fully understand it's early, but what is your vision? Where you want to go?
At the moment, we see ChargeIQ more in the European market. And how much we need to scale is a pretty good question. So I'm looking for the next 1.5 to 2 years. And with this seed round, I think we enter like the big e-mobility markets it's like Benelux and the Scandinavian markets, besides the German market, where we set like most charging infrastructure standards for European markets.
How do you see the developments with Ukraine and the German pipe gas situation playing into the development of electric vehicles in Europe and in Germany?
Yeah, that's two-sided. On the one hand, we see that like delivery times are up. Electric vehicles take way longer than they took before. Even charging infrastructure takes sometimes longer. On the other hand, people really want to use renewable energies. They don't want to go back to fossil. And with our technology, for example, using solar-powered energy only, it's pretty interesting for them to skip like this traditional energies.
One follow-up or one last question from me. Why are you doing this?
Oh, great question.
Because I'm from Stuttgart, and in Stuttgart you only have 3 options: working for Porsche, Bosch, or Daimler, Mercedes-Benz. And I'm like one of the biggest petrolheads you can imagine. And I worked for Daimler, and I saw that we're doing like the best cars, and we're doing only with combustion engines. And if I see what's like our world is changing, I think that's not the right way. And I think if we use more renewable energy and use less fossil energies, that's just the right way we all have to go. And I think that's like one little part I can give back to everybody to make it easier to use electric vehicles and use green energy.